in all the other rooms, and I'm really sorry about being 3 minutes late, but this is improving your presentation skills. And today we have quite a lot of things to go through, and I don't think you can actually read that. I'm really sorry about that. I'm sure you all can read this anyway. So, but yeah.
Really?
Have you ever seen any introductions like that before? Yeah? So what just happened? Yeah?
Did you like the font size?
Clicking through the bullets?
It's perfectly legible from here.
And from here?
Yes.
Yeah. All right, so we see these kind of introductions all the time. Now this session is called From Two Different Presenters. We're both kind of different here, so we're going to give you two other ways of starting a session. So let's start over and try that again. Welcome everyone to Improving Your Presentation Skills, Practical Examples by Two Very Different Speakers. I'm Cathrine Wilhelmsen, or Cathrine Wilhelmsen. I work as a senior BI consultant in a Norwegian company called Inmeta. I'm a data platform MVP, and I tweet and I blog quite a lot, so you can follow me there.
Speaking is an interesting proposition. And being a technical presenter has its own very specific set of issues. It's not entirely like just doing a speech at a wedding, for instance, because we tend to stay around not so much the emotions, but more about the facts. And that kind of makes things a bit different. And if you look around, especially at a technical conference, you're going to find that people are absolutely exceptionally good at the technical part. And as the technical stuff is much easier to measure, and of course everybody's here for the technical stuff, right? We kind of miss out on the whole presentation skills hoopla. And unfortunately, this means that you're going to be heading with pretty high speed straight into something called Mehrabian's law. And this is where my clicker doesn't want to talk to me. That's also part of the fun, by the way. Wakey, wakey.
Yep.
There we go. Yes, there we go. So, Mehrabian's law, by the way, this is one of the most incorrectly cited laws ever. Because people think this means that it doesn't matter what I say, and that's not quite right. It means it doesn't matter how I say it. So this is when trying to convey emotional content, it turns out that what I say matters very little. How I say it and how I move when I do it, that matters much more. So how does this apply to technical speaking? Technical speaking is, again, kind of the same thing as any other speaking. But we need to think about how this ties in. And this also comes to storytelling. We're going to come back to storytelling in a bit. But keep in mind, what you say, what you do matters. Simply because you're the presentation. All of these are tools. You are the presentation. My name is Alexander. I am from Sweden, which is kind of close to Norway, but we still don't understand each other. I am a data platform MVP. I do blogging more, or I should say less frequently than I should. I'm a part of a podcast called Knee Deep in Tech. And I've done a Pluralsight course on Power BI, which was fun. It was actually usable for 2 weeks. Then Microsoft changed half of Power BI. I am not at all bitter. Thank you. So yes.
So that were two kind of different introductions, and we have different styles.
Yes.
So Alexander is more on telling a story, having a kind of a hook, draw you in with a story, get you connected to what he's doing, and then he introduces himself. I'm different. I go straight into this is me, and this is why I'm here, and this is what we're going to go through today and diving into that. And both of those can be right. It's up to you kind of what you prefer to do, how you're comfortable starting your session. So none of those are, I don't know, It's nothing wrong, really, except for a few of these common mistakes that you probably noticed at the start of my session. So one thing that I hear a lot is this concept of like negative expectations, where someone, and especially new speakers, I see this all the time, when they start with, I'm not really an expert, but I'm going to do my best, or I'm going to do just an introduction because I'm not really sure about this. Don't do that. All the people who are in this room are here to listen to you and learn from you. They showed up there for a reason. They want to listen to you. They want to learn from you. So why start with setting those negative expectations for yourself? And I know it's kind of a defense mechanism to do that, because at least then they know up front that I'm not an expert, so I'm not going to disappoint anyone. But instead of doing that, just stand up there with confidence. You are selected to speak, you have a story to tell, and you have something to teach others. So just show up there with confidence. Same thing with apologizing. Like I did, oh, you can't read this, or, this is too small, this font is, anything like that, don't do that. That is part of preparation. So if you know that the font is too small, before you start your session, walk to the back of the room and make sure that everything is readable from the back of the room. And then you don't have to do these things. Now, things do happen. Like when we were prepping for this, we had a 15-minute break before we were supposed to start. Previous session ran over. We started a few minutes too late. I apologize on purpose to demonstrate why that can be kind of an awkward way to start. Those things happen. If something happens that you can't control, one apology is fine, but then just move on. Don't keep repeating it. And finally, the false compliments is where I also hear a lot of speakers do, like, oh, this is so simple, or you just do this, or this is so easy, oh, you probably all know this. And what if the person in the audience don't know this? Maybe they don't think it's simple. Then they're going to be left with that feeling that, but I don't really, that's why I'm here to learn this stuff. So be careful about these things when you start your session.
That kind of turns into structure. And how do you keep from basically falling over yourself when it comes to getting all your stuff out? Because there's so many, I was about to say there are so many things in my head, but that was not entirely what I was thinking, which I think is a good thing. So having a structure and creating something to hang your whole story on, it's all about storytelling, basically. And how the heck do you take something as mundane and boring as, I don't know, Power BI or SQL Server and create a story about it? How do you do that? Really? Well, some people are better at it than others, but if you just put it into 4 parts. The first part is the problem. What are you trying to solve? Why are we here, for starters? The second one is, what's the solution, or what's in it for me? How do I approach this? Then we have the solution, or actually these solutions. There can be more than one. And then we have, what did I do to solve my problem? Not everything that I'm going to go through in a session needs to be something that I've solved. I can actually have a session about something that I ran head first into, and I have no idea how to get out of it. But most of the times you're going to see the same 4 parts: problem, solutions, and how I problems cause available solutions and the solution I chose. So with these parts, it's time to do a bit of a jigsaw puzzle. And how do you get your parts into the right place? Well, here's where we differ a bit. She loves structure. I love structure. She loves structure even more than I do, like a lot. So it's all about sections and parts. And sections is all about making sure that your attention span is where it's supposed to be. Thank you. Yeah. Bad, Catherine. And having these sections is the absolute key, because when you have the story, when you have the sections, then you can do some pretty interesting things to your whole schedule.
So for the attention span, there's studies been done on this that humans can probably pay attention for up to like 20 minutes at the time. And I'm sure you've noticed that in sessions, sitting through 60-minute sessions, at some point you kind of It's very easy to just I just need to check something on my phone or an email, or you do something. So you need to be aware of that as speakers, that the most common attention span is about 20 minutes. So if you use that to your advantage and you break your session into those little chunks, you can do something called time boxing. This helps you when you're both building your session and kind of rehearsing your session as well. So think about that. So you have the storytelling where you can go through the different sections. That's very difficult to do in technical sessions. If I want to do an introduction to a technical topic, how do you kind of wrap that in a story? So one way is to do what Alexandra said, is, problem, how you solved it, different solutions. That's a story. You can also do parts and sections where you can kind of tell a story there. First you do this, then you do this, and then you do something else. And that ties in with very, very nice things for humans. Chunk things in 3 and have 20 minutes for each part. Works great in sessions because you can keep people's attention for 20 minutes at the time. And when you do that, you can do something called time boxing. And this is something that we do for, or I do for my sessions. It's basically just when you're prepping your session, you build things into different parts. So for this session here, it's a 60-minute session. So we know that's the time box, the main time box that we have to relate to. The first part is that we have kind of little buffers. 5 minutes at the start and 5 minutes at the end for unexpected things like the previous session running over. So if you add that into that, you know that you actually only have 50 minutes-ish of content, but you can adjust to that. That gives you that little buffer zone for any unexpected questions, any technical difficulties, or something like that. And then you have the actual sections of content. So in our case here, 3 to 5 sections, 10, 20, 30 minutes, you kind of have to see what you want to present. But by chunking it up like this, what you're doing is you're making it easier for yourself to remember 3 main parts of your session, for example. You're making it easier for attendees to pay attention in those different parts. And you can have those little soft breaks between the sections where people can kind of take that 1 second to absorb what you just told them and get ready for the next part. Instead of having 60 minutes where you go through like one long demo, which I'm sure you've probably sat through in the past as well.
Another thing, I'm kind of curious. What's your opinion? Is 50 minutes a long time to be on stage? Is 50 minutes a long session? No, it isn't. Trust me. When you get up here, 50 minutes is just going to go like that. And anybody ever played any games? Thank you. Any video games, right? So a save point, when you've tried to kill the boss 16 times and you cannot get by it, it's the same thing with time boxing. It's a save point, so you know where you should be at any given point in time. It's a way to navigate the maze of this session.
Yeah, and it's helping you. So what we have here is, and you need to find kind of framework that works for you. The way I do it is, once you have your sections and your session, you need to rehearse it. You need to run through it. You need to know the content that you have. And you can do that by basically just standing up and speaking to a mirror or a dog or a child or a parent. My mom loves all the SQL stuff that I do. She doesn't understand it, but she's like, "You're so good, honey. Doing a great job." But you rehearse the timings with a stopwatch. That gives you an idea of how much time. And again, by breaking things up, you don't have to rehearse the full 60 minutes or 50 minutes. It's just a few minutes at a time for each part of your session. So once you have that, you can kind of build out these time boxes as well. And this is the main thing that I think of when I'm doing my sessions, because by doing this, I know that, okay, so I have 15 minutes for this first part-ish. If I run over, I know that I have to cut down on the next part. Or if I'm running short, I know that I need to talk a little bit more to kind of fill out that section. It's not just 60 minutes anymore. It's like these tiny little chunks. It's much easier to manage for a speaker. And then finally, we have the actual clock warnings. Now, we're lucky here at Data Scotland and other events, so we have amazing volunteers, like the lady in the back of the room. Do you have the timesheets? So we get help from volunteers like that. So they hold up these timesheets. They help us to know that we have 30 minutes left or 15 minutes left. And I can kind of tie that back into the clock warnings that I have in my head from building out these time boxes. And when it comes to rehearsing, what I recommend is, if you're a new speaker, run through your session a few times. But if you've built it out with a story that you can relate to, it's your story, you feel very confident just telling your story. You don't need to get all the details correct. If you break it into sections and parts, and you've done all your timings, it should be fairly easy to run through your session when you get on stage. But I always recommend that you memorize the first 5 minutes-ish, because once you do that, if you're nervous like me, I'm still kind of shaky before I get on stage, even now. It's just the adrenaline, you have your nerves. Memorizing the first 5 minutes, you get on stage, you're still, kind of shaky and you're getting ready, and then you go like, boom, it's muscle memory. Welcome everyone, thank you for attending, and you keep going. And once you get into that flow, first 5 minutes done, it's so much easier to keep going in that session.
Yes.
There's a lot of people in here.
I know, right?
There's a lot of people.
So how do you break your ice?
Yeah, it can be kind of scary when you get up on stage. And there are a lot of things that you can do to help yourself. Break the ice when you get into the room. Now, this part here was slightly awkward. But what did I do when I first walked in here?
Did anybody enjoy the chocolate? Uh-huh.
Is there any chocolate left? Keep passing it around if you want to. That's something that I do for 2 reasons. The main reason is that it helps me calm my nerves. I connect with the audience. I have a few people I can walk around. I have something to do instead of just, the first 5 minutes of a session when, you're standing here and you're like, it's awkward. It can get very awkward. So for me, it's something that I do. And I think it's fun as well, especially if I get to go and travel to other countries. I'm like, hey, make some Norwegian chocolate, they're really good. Make some jokes, talk to people, and just kind of break the ice. It helps with the audience.
I can just throw one thing in here. Norwegian chocolate works perfect. Swedish licorice, not so much.
Swedish salty or licorice?
It's awesome.
How do you know that, Alex?
Because it's awesome.
You've had a few other speakers kind of choke on.
There is that.
Yeah, there is that. So that's like one thing. Break the ice and calm yourself down. And this is where you probably need to also go deep breath. It helps calm you down, get you all set and ready to go. And also, find a friend. If you're a new speaker or if you're alone, find a friend. So like I mentioned, we have volunteers who are helping us with the timekeeping here. If you don't have that, if it's a smaller conference or even something in your company, find someone that you trust who can be there and help you with the timings, help you with if something unexpected happens. And if you're completely alone, and that also happens, once you start speaking and you look around, you're gonna find like a few friendly faces. There are always someone in the room who are sitting there like, yeah, this is awesome. Focus on those people, because they're going to help you throughout your session. You kind of bounce off of that energy. And if you have a friend in there as well, you maybe make a little joke or something depending on your style, but kind of focus on them. Now we get to the fun part.
The fun part, she says.
Yeah.
So body language. Again, 55% of what I try to convey is about my body language. And a teeny tiny fraction is what I say. So thinking of what I do and how I do it is exceptionally important. So how would you do this and why would you do this? Well, it turns out that gestures is what's known as a nonverbal anchor. In plain English, that means that if I wave around, you're going to remember that. Simple as that. Now, waving around, which I can happily do, and you're going to go, what that? It needs to be functional. Whatever I do needs to be connected to what I'm saying. There was a very interesting experiment done in Europe many, many years ago where people went to different parts of Europe and used very specific gestures in a completely incorrect way. It was very fun, and the researchers got a few punches for their troubles, poor people. So how do I do this? Well, functional gestures. There are many ways of doing functional gestures. Let's start with these things, the hands. Many, many years ago, I was a paramedic, and there's something called a spine board, usually bright orange or bright pink, and it's designed to strap a patient down if you have any thoughts about their spine or any kind of injuries. They do an awesome job of making people stiff, like a board. And that's how I see a lot of new speakers. They go out on stage like this, not very flexible at all, huge eyes like deer in headlights. Or they start doing very funny things with their hands. For instance, the forklift, or the left rabbit, the right rabbit, the double rabbit, Wonder Woman.
Oh, I clicked.
You clicked. Wonder Woman, there we go. The soldier, the fig leaf, one of my personal favorites, the T-Rex, which is much more fun if I do it because I'm much taller than her. Yes, there we go. So where do you put these things if you're not using them? I'll give you a top tip, which is very, very difficult to do. Take these, just let them hang by your sides. If you're not using them, just let them hang by your sides.
Or don't. I mean, my hands are hanging very firmly, not by my side right now.
There is that.
So this is something that we disagree on. And again, this is different personal styles. For me...
And I'm right.
He thinks he's right.
Yes.
So for me, standing like this, it feels unnatural to me. I get his point. It works for him. It works for many people. It might work for most of you in here. For me, this feels unnatural. Like if I do that, my shoulders start rising up and I feel like I'm standing like this instead. This is not a natural pose to me. And I notice that when I'm talking to people as well, in conversations when you're just one-on-one with someone. So if I'm talking to Alex, I'm not standing like this and talking to him. I'm usually standing something like this with my hands folded or in front of me, or I even, I move my legs sometimes. It's part of my natural body language. So for me, that doesn't work to just stand like that. I stand like this most of the time instead. So you need to figure out what's natural to you. But the point here is be aware of it. So the first time I met Alex, fun story, I spoke at SQL Saturday Gothenburg.
Yes.
He thought I was American, by the way, which is why we still speak English to each other, because we had 2 days speaking English before he realized I'm actually Norwegian.
And we should understand each other.
Fun story.
Yes.
I was presenting. This was a few years ago. I was nervous. I had too much content. I was so excited about everything, and my voice was I was there the entire time. And he walks up to me after the session. He was like, "It's a great session. I love the content, but you have bunny hands." I was what?
Those were literally my first words.
Yeah.
I'm not good with people.
No, which is why we're good friends now. We're not good with people, either of us.
That works.
But that was the introduction. You have bunny hands. And I was like, what? And he was like, entire session, your hands were like this. And I was apparently, for 60 minutes, when I was talking about something, I did some gestures, but otherwise, my hands were flopping around like this, walking around like a bunny. And that was apparently kind of distracting for people who were trying to pay attention to what I was trying to say.
I couldn't see why.
No. So that was me and my bunny hands. I've learned not to do that. So now I try to fold my hands instead because that feels good to me. I cannot stand like that. It just feels like, I'm on that board.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's the key part here is do what you feel is natural. And don't try to force a square peg into a round hole, so to speak. Moving on from the hands, let's do gestures. Yeah, I'm coming to that. So picture a box over your torso. This is known as the box. And you probably want to stay inside the box when you do your gestures. Because if I do my gestures underneath the box, it's kind of meh. Nobody cares. And apparently he is bored too. Or I can stay above my box and kind of be in your face. This is too much. And if you go even further, that's known as jazz hands. And never ever use jazz hands. Seriously, you're going to find people on the internet. You're going to find people, I was about to say in the street, doing things here. This is too much. You're going to be remembered for the rest of your lives, but not for the right things. So try to stay roughly around your torso. And this also means that having this box, let's do some examples. We're going to do 3 examples how you can use gestures for getting things across. The first you've seen a couple of times, and that's numbers. I just did that. Catherine's been using it a few times. 5, 4. And that's an excellent way of attaching what I'm saying. Again, my voice is just a teeny tiny part of my message. Attach it to whatever I'm saying. You can also do 1, 2, 3, and so on and so forth. You can go the other way too. 3, 2, be very careful where the last one ends up. Ask me how I know. Yes, so
Those social skills, man.
none at all, and very disrespectful. You should know. So that's one way of doing it. Another way is, anybody ever done some fishing outside of an aquarium? Yeah, because that doesn't count. Everybody who's ever seen a fishing expedition knows that it's all about the size, right? I caught a big fish, when in reality it was pretty darn small or even tiny. And instantly you know exactly what I'm talking about, because size matters not only for fish, but just using my hands, I can convey a sense of size, right? And I can also use, if I have two things that I want to convey, I have the first one or the second one. But what happens if I say I'm going to do the right thing and the left thing? What did I just do? Yes. So this is my right. This is not your right. But you hear me say right, and I'm going to wave around what apparently is my left hand, which it isn't. That's going to introduce cognitive dissonance that does not work very well for learning. So be very mindful of where you are. Whenever I say right, I need to use my left hand.
And that's difficult. It's
Yes.
very difficult when I say, to the right. That's something that you need to rehearse. So once you, it's very easy if you're working with things. Earlier in the session I said sections. It's easy. Top to bottom is very easy because that's the same. But going, from left to right. If you try that yourself, just try it now. Your right hand and say left and to right. It feels weird, right? So if you're doing something like that, or even things like timelines, I'm sure you've seen timelines as well. So, from 2000 to 2019. That feels like we're going backwards to the audience. So instead of saying 2000 to 2019, that's the right way for the audience. So be aware of that, and that is something that you might have to rehearse a bit before it kind of sticks.
And it's very, very important. It doesn't feel very much, feel like a good thing or a big thing, but it makes the difference. People are going to go, huh? And that's not a good thing. Poses. There is something in the back of most people. Most people are actually vertebrates. Not all. And the ones that are not are usually politicians, but that's a whole different story. Use the spine, people. It is there for a reason. Make sure that you stand up straight for many reasons. One is this makes it much easier for me to breathe. And breathing is a good thing most of the time, unless you're underwater. And breathing means that I get oxygenation in my blood, and that decreases my anxiety and my nervousness. And it's easy. Just stand proud. What did I tell you? You are the presentation. Act like it. There is one of the, I think it's actually the mostly viewed TED Talk in history. It's on something called power posing. It doesn't work. Power posing does not work. It's been torn to shreds by the scientific community. But just looking at what it's about, fake it till you make it. If I go on stage and I feel proud, I know what I'm doing, it's going to work. So use your body. The next thing is body language. What does it mean if I do this? Well, if you look at old texts, like a couple of years back, this means that I want to have something between me and you. This means that I want to have a distance, and this means that I don't want to interact with you. But it's not that simple. It can mean that I'm cold, or it can mean that I'm comfortable doing this. Now, it does not convey a good thing when I'm on stage, but don't immediately jump to the conclusion that I want to have something between me. But this is not an open body language. So use your body, be open, and don't talk to people, especially not that one. I can talk to this. It's not going to care. If it does, I'm going to be scared. Talk to your audience. This is where the magic happens.
So what if I feel kind of relaxed and I put my hands in my pockets?
Well, sure, you can do that. And does this look very professional to you? No, I don't think so. I have pockets. That is a bad thing, trust me. You want to keep your hands out of your pockets, and you don't want to go like swaying and leaning. You'd be surprised how many people do things that they have no idea about. One of my cats, she is not quite right in the head. She always stands like this. It's even more fun if you have 4 legs, but just 2 legs works fine too. I'm not even aware of what I'm doing.
I do that quite often.
You do?
I do.
Yes.
And I don't think about it until someone points it out. Again, find a friend.
Yes.
So with poses as well, it's very important, especially if you're doing technical sessions. Now we're mostly standing here because it was more of a soft skills session. If you have a technical session, you're kind of locked to this little device right here, right? And you have to work with things. And right now, I have a very fun thing where my height is not very tall. So now if I'm working with this screen, I lose connection with like the entire audience back here. I've done sessions where the lectern is like literally up here. It's not fun at all trying to do a session like that. For everyone else it is. For me, not so much. So just be aware of that as well. If you are doing some technical presentations, don't stand like this for 60 minutes down here. And sometimes you do have to, look at something. You might have to demo something. But once in a while, try and go like, oh, there are people in the room. Try and connect with people. And again, with the poses, it might be awkward. You might have to, lean down. You might have to sit down. There are many things that you need to kind of work around there. But once in a while, make sure that you do the whole thing with, you have a spine. Stand up, breathe, and just, power pose without power posing.
I'm going to do a bit of an aside here. Mm-hmm. Technical conferences generally feature demos, right? So how do you combine all these things? I am the message. I need to be out. I need to move about. But I also need to sit behind that computer to do my demos. And everybody knows that you cannot do 2 things at the same time. I can hardly move the mouse and talk at the same time. So what's your approach to demos, and how do you do demos? Because we have kind of different
We have different. Here. So I am comfortable doing demos live and talking to people, talking through the demos. There are a few things that I'm very careful about doing demos. And this is an aside, actually, but we're fine. So with demos, there are a few things that you do need to be aware of. Again, try and make sure that you connect with the audience. When you connect with the audience, you also kind of detach yourself from the computer, and it allows people to absorb what you just said. How many of you have seen demos where you see like a long script or something and it's like, let's just scroll down here and run these things? And you're sitting there trying to kind of follow along and like you can't see anything. Have you seen that? Yeah? Or if someone does something where you have a demo, so right now I'm going to do something kind of off script here. I'm going to go out. What I'm going to ask you to do is close your eyes for me. All of you close your eyes and I can see you. So now I'm going to do a demo. So I'm going to click here, and then I'm going to do this, and just click here, here, and here. Open your eyes. What did I just do?
Absolutely nothing, because your screen is not showing.
Is that the HDMI?
No, it isn't. It's on presentation view.
Why is it doing that?
This is also
This is why he does not do demos,
yes,
by the way. So what do you do?
I generally don't do demos. Seriously, I do my demos recorded. So that means that I know exactly what timing I have.
Okay.
I know exactly how long it's going to take for this mouse to move here. So I can stand and I can tell a story at the same time as I do my demos. And my demos, I was about to say, one of the worst things that you can do with working with Azure is someone trips over the internet cable, right? Or Azure dies. It has happened. Most of the times, your recorded demos will not fail. They do, some days. So So I do recorded demos.
So that is one backup strategy. Have screenshots or do recorded demos so things like that doesn't happen. Because if you're a new speaker and that happens, you can get kind of flustered. My point was, I'm not going to attempt that again because the screen was causing a few issues. When you're doing a demo, talk through every single step that you're doing and call it out. So if you're clicking somewhere, click File, New Project, click New SSIS Project. Type in the name of the project and then click OK. Once you do that, you will see on the right-hand side of the screen that the project has opened. Right-click on the project name and click New SSIS Package. I didn't even do anything, but you can still kind of follow along in your head, right? You can at least understand what I'm trying to say. And especially if you're trying to take a few notes, you don't have to, keep paying attention to the screen the entire time. So by doing something like that, one, it gives you more time to actually do things. You do it slower. You give yourself a few more seconds. You call it out for everyone, especially if they have some kind of visual impairment or they're not hearing quite well. You're helping them to kind of pay attention and follow along with your demos. So be aware of that if you are doing demos, and make sure that you give yourself enough time to walk through things so people can follow along.
Walking around on stage is fun. Movement is good. And movement can also be a distractor. How many of you have ever seen a presenter just aimlessly wander about and realize at the end of his session or her session that, yes, I've just done 6,000 steps? Yeah. Again, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? What do I need to think about? Functional gestures. It's the same thing with movement. I need to think about, why am I moving? Because if I don't need to move, I shouldn't move. I'm more than happy to just stay here. Not everybody is.
So I'm different.
Oh, yes.
Yes. In many ways.
Yes.
I move a lot more. I talk with my hands. This is natural to me. So my gestures are usually bigger, except I don't talk like this and do all of these unnecessary gestures for everything, because that would be very distracting to all of you. But I still do talk with my hands and I emphasize things. And even just that, I emphasize things. That's a natural movement for me to kind of convey that to you. And I do like walking around a bit. Again, standing like this for 60 minutes is not comfortable to me. And walking around for me is also a way of connecting with, this side of the audience and the people sitting here. Walking over here allows me to interact a little bit more with this side of the audience. Again, having that connection. So that is where I am slightly different. I move more. I do sway sometimes, and I do act like your cat sometimes.
That's
part of
true.
me.
And moving about, we usually think of movement in 2 dimensions. That would be X and Y. But there's a third dimension that is very rarely used, but can be very, very powerful. Just think of, if you're in a story and you're talking about something, and I was reaching out and giving my cat some food. Just sitting down. Now, I'm old, so all my joints go crack. Kind of detracts from the story, but you get the point. Just moving in a Z-axis makes everything different.
And now I don't usually feed any cats in my technical sessions. I'm sure that you don't do that either. So that might not be natural. But that, going back to the whole demos, is where you can have that movement. So I can move back and forth on stage. I can stand here when I'm talking to you and doing something. And I can move over here when I want to interact with my computer. I can also sit down if I'm doing more demos. And that kind of creates that kind of visual experience for you. When I'm here, it's demo time, it's technical, paying attention, and then I can walk over here and be standing in front of you and telling a story.
Which is a good point. You can use the stage in so many ways. We did a timeline with our hands, left and right, right?
Yep.
No, right, left, right, you know what I mean. But what I can do is I can go here. I started with computers back in the late 90s, long time ago. And then we moved to 2010, which was when Azure first came on the market. And now we're at 2019. And I just used the stage as a timeline, and you can connect the different parts of what I'm saying to this timeline. You can also designate different spots on the stage depending on the size of the stage for different things. I come back here because I've decided that this is my storytelling space. And this means that when people start to connect the dots and realize that, he's going back there for all his stories. So the next time I'm going to walk over here, it's probably going to be part of a story. And then I go over here to do something else. And then I go back. So that's a way of, again, connecting the different parts of the stage to things that I'm saying. Are you good to go for the next one?
I think so.
Okay. We're now going to go through a lot of ways how not to do these things. Why? Because we want to make sure that they stick in your heads. No, seriously. We're going to give you some of the mannerisms, or bad behaviors, if you will, just because that if you've seen them on the screen, if you've kind of heard their names, you're going to realize that, I might be doing this. And the first step in fixing anything is realizing that you have a problem.
Bunny hats.
Bunny hats,
Yep.
yes. So let's do some interesting examples. Wringing hands.
Yeah.
Anybody seen people do this? Yeah, very common. And it's very bad if you have the clicker on your fingers, just saying. If you're not, no. Be mindful of your hands. Why are they doing this? Because they're scared, busy, want to go something else. Not a good thing. Or hands in your pockets.
Yeah.
Some people have more pockets than others.
Yep. Ooh.
Yeah, I used to present in cargo pants. I had a lot of pockets to put my hands in. It looks very weird. Keep your hands out of your pockets and keep stuff out of your pockets. I already have too much in my pockets.
You have pockets.
I do.
I wish I had pockets. These jeans do not have pockets. Yeah.
So that's a fake pocket?
That's fake pocket. Female
There you
clothing
go.
for you. Yeah. No,
True.
not fun. But it's a good thing when you're presenting because I literally can't put my hands in my pockets because there are no pockets there.
There we go.
So there is a good thing.
So what you can do instead is touching your face.
I can.
Yes.
Yeah.
And this is so common. You're going to see people doing things. And you'd be surprised how much you can do with your beard. I used to have a much longer beard, and it's so nice to just tug on it. You're going to meet a guy with the longest beard in the SQL Server community. Rob Sewell, he's here. He was the guy with the voice this morning. It's a long beard. And you just want to go and don't do that.
So I have one thing that you probably haven't
Beard?
really. No, well, you have a beard.
Okay.
I have this.
Yes.
Yes. This can also be fun when you're presenting, and especially if you have a microphone and it gets tangled in your hair and it's all over. And I've seen this like so many times. I've done this so many times, and it's just like, ugh, in the way. Many of you don't have that problem. I can see that from the hairstyles that you have. But if you do, just be aware of it. So what I do sometimes is, if I have a lapel mic or a mic like this, make sure that the hair is not in the way. You can just tie it up or just try and leave it alone. And sometimes you have to do it, but don't do it like every 10 minutes.
No, again.
Although it is fun to do.
You can do that as part of your deliberate movement, but it needs to be deliberate. Yeah. Then it comes to objects. We can always use different kinds of objects, but an object is a part of the presentation. You're the presentation, but an object is just a tool. There is a reason that I have the clicker on my finger, because if I use one of those, I am locking my whole arm. It is not by choice, it just happens. So that means my whole arm is going to go rigid. This, I can still stay pretty expressive. You don't have that issue with that thing because you're more used to it than I.
Yeah.
I have a friend that always uses one of these for the sole reason that she turns into a seal if she has one of those. It's true. It's hilarious. You just give her a clicker and she goes like this. And why am I doing this? So yeah, she's got one of these for everybody's sake.
And this is also something that you do need to kind of get used to, because it is fairly big. It fits nicely in my hand. You do need to learn how to use it. And how many of you see sessions where the presenter goes, so up there, you just look at the red dot up in the red corner there over on that side. Have you seen that before? Anyone? Yeah? How many of you see what they point at most of the time? You don't really see it. There's also, when you do that, if I turn around, I lose the connection with the entire audience. So be aware that this is a tool that's supposed to help you and not hinder you by, you have to point it. Or even when I'm, if I want to switch the slides, so if I want to go back, I don't even have to point it anywhere. I don't have to do this to move to the next slide or do this. This is just a tool. But be aware of it and kind of how you use it so you don't turn into the seal when you do it.
And if you have a laser and you use it, I will find you. Don't use a laser, please. Another thing that is very easy to do is you talk with your hands, you do something, and you just put your hands wherever you want to put them. Everything I do makes noise. And the poor people in the YouTube video just tore off their headsets because this is a very loud noise. Again, be mindful of your hands. Don't let them just fall through your sides and make noise. Everything I do matters. And of course, then there are the bobbing of heads. Some people are better at it than others. And some presenters just use their heads to emphasize everything they say. And this is not at all an issue, right? And I'm turning green, I think, so I'll stop doing that. And then there's my personal favorite. It's very rare, but when you've seen it once, it cannot be unseen. The zombie shamble. When people decide that I want to be over here, or maybe, no, I want to be here. And yeah, you're laughing. I've seen it. I've tried to avoid, but just going this way. It's all doing the whole Monty Python thing on stage. It's fun, but it's not very conducive to learning. And again, it's all about me giving you a message. That's a bad message, but it's kind of fun, though. Yes?
And then you have all the things that you might not be aware of that you do, which ties back to finding that friend who can come up to you and say, hi, I'm Alex, you have bunny hands. You need someone to give you that kind of raw, honest feedback when you're doing something. Because when you're presenting, now this one is actually taped. I have a few other sessions that are recorded. It is the worst thing in the world to watch yourself present, because you realize all the things that you do. So early when I started speaking, I said actually a lot, and then actually it's like this, and actually we do this instead, and then actually, and I realized that actually was my filler word. I've learned that you don't do the ums and ahs, and I was very aware of that, and I replaced it with actually. It does not work. It changes the meaning of a sentence. So be aware of those things, and those are things that you cannot realize when you're on stage, because you have to focus on the slide deck, on your demos, on your presentation, calming your nerves. You have 1,000 things that you need to focus on. So find a friend that you can rehearse with, or who can sit in the audience and give you that honest feedback, like you have bunny hands. Or someone else that I know who spent entire session, they might be not even realizing that they're scratching their arm, but it's kind of distracting to the audience when you do that the entire time. Or something else, any kind of like mannerisms that you're not really aware of, find someone who can tell you, and then it's your job to be aware of it, and you're not going to remove all of those things, but be aware of them, and anything that can be distracting, try and eliminate that.
Go for it.
Yeah.
Common mistakes.
Yes. So we are getting close to the end of the session. Now, at the beginning of the session, you saw a horrible opening that hurt. It hurt to do that. It pained me to go through all the bullet points on that slide, but it was just kind of an example. And we see the same thing when you're getting close to the end of your session, that there are a few things that you notice. So most of you were here for the keynote. Craig joked about this. So we only have 15 slides to go. Right? It's a joke because it happens, and it happens frequently. And part of this is just you didn't rehearse enough. It's something, there are a lot of people who try and wing it, and they end up not really knowing their content. Or it could be something completely out of your control. And that can be a good thing as well. So I've done a session on presentation skills previously in the United States, and I had a few people in the audience. Have you heard of Kendra Little? Yeah, a few of you? She's a well-known presenter. Hugo Cornelis, Rob Loke, a few of these other community speakers. And during my session, they had so much amazing feedback. They had their stories, their experiences, their tips for all the other people sitting in that room. So I had well-known international speakers adding to my presentation, which was great. The only problem, though, they added a lot of things to my presentation. So when I got to this part, on trying to tell people that you need to rehearse with the poor timing, I was already 5 minutes over time because they had added so much to my presentation. And those are the things that you can't control all of it, or if some technical issues happen, or if the previous session runs over, there are things that are out of your control, but that's why it's up to you to kind of work with that. So in my session, I could kind of work that into my session and explain that, you saw all of these things happen. It was a deliberate decision to let them continue those conversations and share those things because I felt that it added to it. And sometimes you may have a few hecklers in the session, sitting on the front row, going like, what about this edge case that no one else cares about? Or what about this? Or you're doing it wrong, or something like that. It happens. We see these things happen a lot of the time. And if you are aware of it, you can kind of go, great question. Let's talk about that outside of the room after the session because I do need to get through my entire content. If that doesn't work, again, rely on the friend that you have. Maybe if you are a little nervous, or if there's someone that is, just not stopping, having one other person in the room go, can we just, do this later, can be a way of handling that situation. This ties back to the sections and parts and rehearsal that we talked about previously as well. If you have your sections and you've time boxed them, you can kind of follow along throughout your session and see, are we on time here? Are we, do I need to shorten something? Do I need to talk a little bit more about something and kind of adjust? And the better you know your story and your session, the easier it is to adjust your timing. And I see a lot of people when they build out new sessions, it's like copy and paste, 45 slides, this is probably fine. And then they end up with this, I just need to skip through these, 40 slides. And there's also a trick here, if this happens, and it can happen, that you really do need to get off stage and you don't have time for it, instead of doing the thing where you go and you click through all the slides just really fast, because that's gonna make all the people in the audience go, but I wanted to see that. You showed me something interesting, I just wanna see what's on there, and they feel like something has been taken away from them. If you have presenter mode, there is a way that you can go in and just hop to a different slide. You don't even have to point it out. So that's also a way of doing that. If you see that you're short on time, you have this entire set of slides that you can't get through, just go into presenter mode and skip to that slide and continue like it was the plan all along. No one's going to notice unless you do the whole let me click through these things. How many times have you seen this?
I can't count that high.
No. Happens all the time.
Overflow.
Yes. And here we have my pet peeve. This is also something that we've had many discussions about. So when you're doing sessions, you often get to the whole, right, we have 5 minutes left. Do we have any questions?
Crickets.
No? Oh, yes, one question. It's like awkward silence, and people are like, can we just get out? We want our coffee, and I need to go to the bathroom or something. And then there's one person who goes like, yes. And he has that one question that is not relevant to anyone else in the room. It's very specific to his project at that point in time, and he hogs the last 5 minutes. And what happens there is that people go like, okay, well, this isn't really relevant to me. I'm going to start packing up my bag and like sneaking out the back, hoping no one sees me. Or people are just sitting there and going like, just get through it. And I've seen that happen many times, and the combination of poor timing and ending with those questions where people just kind of, they trickle out of the room. And that's a weak ending. So instead, I prefer not to end with the questions. I prefer to say, if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to take that conversation afterwards, outside of the room. I'll be hanging around, but let's just wrap up this session and then do the strong ending. And here we have a couple of different ways of ending a session as well. So for me, what I like to do is I want to end with something that is kind of memorable, a key takeaway, a call to action, something that you can, take away. And I want to force that into your mind when you leave the room, because you're going to see 15 other sessions, or 5 at least today. So I want to make sure that you remember one thing. And for this one is improve one thing each time you present. You're never going to be perfect. You're going to make mistakes. You're going to mess up. But if you focus on improving one, my ending on things.
My ending is slightly different, but it's kind of still the same thing. Again, look at all the other speakers. There are so many exceptionally skilled technical speakers here. All of them, including us, can benefit from thinking a bit about the soft skills, because we're all humans. It's all about conveying a message. And that means that I am the message. I set the stage. I own the stage. It's a skill, and that skill can be learned. For some it's easier, some it's harder, but it can be learned. So that means you need to practice. You need to take all these things that we just told you, take them home, put your own twist on it, practice, and be absolutely epic. I'm Alexander.
I'm Cathrine.
We love to talk, and thank you very much for your time.
And we'll be here for questions. That was, by the way, a strong ending. We said thank you. We got our applause. Now we feel good. We get that adrenaline rush. Now you can go and get your coffee and your snacks and enjoy the rest of the day. So thank you again. All right.